everyone, and welcome to another episode of Identity Library. My name is Veronica Becher, and today I'm here joined by Alyx Hacks, and she's a wonderful friend of mine who I met actually at the gym, in the gym class, and would you like to say hi? Maybe
Hi.
Wow, beautiful voice. And you will never imagine how this episode actually came into fruition. We were planning on doing it for a whole semester. It just never happened. But at some point, we were like, we have to. And I don't know. It's been going well. We are 1 month in. You still haven't heard from me. I'm so sorry, dear listeners. But it's okay. We're getting there. The weather is beautiful, of course, talking about something really random. And I'm super excited for spring to come. We had some snow days, some crazy snow days. For everyone who's not from North Carolina, it's not a typical thing happening in Raleigh, right? Have you done anything during, snow days?
Snow?
Yes.
I played with the snow a little bit in my driveway. That's about it. Relaxed at home. I feel like it's weird that the weather got so warm this week too, right after we had the snow.
I know.
It's like 70 degrees outside right now.
What just happened? We had a snow day a week ago. Like, seriously, we were just building snowmen next to the bell tower, and now we're like literally walking around in a t-shirt. But no, it's crazy. So yeah, Alyx, would you like to just introduce yourself? Like, what are you studying? Kind of your background, just a little bit more, so I don't feel like I'm just talking over you.
No, yeah, sure. I am a graphic and experience designer. That's my major. I'm minoring in anthropology. And yeah, it was a journey to get here, but I am here. I love NC State. I love studying here. Other than that, I also am in art to wear. I just started that this year. It's been a journey as well. But I just found out this week I actually have been officially accepted to be in the show in April. So I'm excited and looking forward to that.
Let's just start. Okay, I want to just jump into the topic. I want to know, could you explain to people that don't know what art to wear is, what art to wear is?
Kind of.
Yeah.
So it's basically like a club where there's different committees. So like you don't have to be a designer if you don't want to be a designer. But I guess the main part of it is that there's these prospect designers that design the clothes to eventually go on the runway in the spring. So you kind of spend the entire year creating a concept and then designing, and then you like actually make the piece and then it's presented on the runway. This year it's actually going to be at the Greg. So it's a little different. It's going to be in the museum, and it's going to be like, I keep calling it an exhibition because I can't think of another word. It's almost like performance art in a sense because they're going to have it rented for 3 hours, I believe. So there's like maybe choreography and things like that are going to be added as well. So it's going to be cool to see like everything that the models are going to be doing. But yeah, there's like a production team, and then there's like also a graphic design team. There's a few different teams, and that's actually what got me into it. Is I was like, I'll do the graphic work to promote art to wear, and then I was like, maybe I want to actually design the wearable art itself. So I got involved in that and kind of have been learning a new medium because I've never really designed clothes before. So it's interesting for sure.
This is crazy because I actually talked about this event with my other podcast friend, and he was like, I don't know if I should say it, actually. I know it's my podcast, but he was like laughing about it. He's like, this is so fascinating because one thing that they incorporate is like, of course, these people are professionals, but you can like touch the person like on a mannequin type of thing, apparently. And I'm like, this is like terrifying if you think about the fact that someone is like touching you. Well, of course, they're touching your clothes, but it's like such a strange, abstract like picture. But the other like thought that came to my mind is when you have like art exhibitions and special performance art too, so like people like dance and something like that with like a painting in the background or like some other things, that's always so interesting. Have you ever seen, I don't know, it circulated over Instagram once. It's this woman who looks at someone and the person that sits across of her cannot express any emotions as well as her, and then they brought in her first love, like the man she loved since like childhood, and they broke up like years ago. And so this woman's like, in her 50s, I think. And she's just looking at him and is not allowed to show any emotion, and it's just like she just breaks down. It's such an emotional video. If you've ever seen it, it's performance art, like one of the most like famous ones. But speaking of art to wear, so you said you're designing it, right? Are you like actually making like the clothes yourself too?
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, I will say some of it is like thrifted clothes that I'm kind of like deconstructing and then reconstructing into something new. But I guess at that point, if you want to define it as like creation, I am still creating the piece. So like I took, those like white little tank tops. They're called like wife beaters, but
Yes,
not the greatest term.
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! But I do know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
And it's easier to like buy them. They're also cheaper, or like you can
Right.
get them like in any thrift store almost. Oh my gosh, this is so bad.
So I've been playing with that fabric because it's interesting where it's ribbed. I can kind of like tear it apart. So I've been kind of like shredding the shirt, and then I've sewn it in different ways. And I've even been playing with like pantyhose or like tights too, and like ripping them up and then re-sewing everything together. So I'm kind of going with this like half deconstructed and then like reconstructed look. So it's kind of like controlled chaos in a way. So it's really like, it's been interesting and fun to kind of explore with textiles, because I feel like when you asked me to talk about like art and design, I kind of thought about very traditional art, especially because that's what I did growing up. I like drew with a pencil and paper and stuff. And now I'm using that as like part of my process to make this like crazy thing that I never would have thought I would be making. I had to learn how to like sew on a machine earlier this week again. And I only did it a little bit as a kid, and I never did it since. So it's kind of interesting to see how like me just wanting to make some kind of wearable art piece or like clothes has kind of evolved into, well, now I'm having to learn sewing, and I might want to learn beading and needle felting and all these different like crafty things. So kind of all over the place.
That's amazing. No, seriously, I'm curious. Would you say it's a trend that is like ongoing, or we had it previously that people perceive art in a completely different way? That, for instance, fashion can be a sense of not only like the normal fashion shows, but rather art pieces. I know I forgot the name. What's the category of fashion that you have? Haute couture, like
Oh, just like couture.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I always think of like art in that context, but never of like experimenting with fabrics in a way where it's like I actually created for like an exhibition or like a performance. I don't know, art on campus was kind of crazy. Do you like, what do you think? Like, do you think it's like a trend that changed, or is it an ongoing thing?
I don't know. I mean, I think it depends on probably who you talk to, who you ask. I would say probably a little bit of both. It seems like there's kind of always been a community to some extent within history that's like had a respect for art and can kind of see art in different ways. I mean, I feel like you can find photography from like the 1800s when it first became relevant that, it just depicts like a family portrait or a landscape portrait. And then you can tell how over time photography became more of like a nuanced art form like you're talking about. So I don't know. I guess to some extent, yes, it's evolved over time, but I also think there's always been a little community that existed. And I think it's also changed over time to like a bigger community that kind of like can find a respect for art, if that makes sense, and view it in a like more broad way. I don't know.
No, actually, I love this interpretation. I feel like you see all these different art movements, and people like shift nowadays also to like more non-traditional medium, like using actually like digital art to create something. But there are so many different movements happening, especially like AI being like a big topic too nowadays, where I'm like really conflicted about it. I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I love or hate it. I don't know. I feel like sometimes I go through Pinterest and I see so many photos that I love, but they're not real. They just generated.
Yeah,
And I
exactly.
get so upset because I'm like, I've been getting into like photography. Like I actually really like the analog old cameras, and I don't know, I feel like it's just the beauty of taking a photo by you, like with a camera that where you need to actually get everything out, like know the whole construction inside the camera.
Right.
And it feels like it's an art, like it is actually art. It is art,
Mhm.
right?
It is, yeah.
But it's more than just taking a photo on your phone. It's sometimes more than that. And I think that's just fascinating.
Yeah, it is interesting to see how like the love for, I guess now vintage items has kind of like become such a popular thing, especially with cameras. That's so interesting to me because I always have found like even just older digital cameras to be fun to use compared to like the iPhone. I'm glad you brought that up because it is like a different experience. You're like pressing a button compared to like pressing a digital button on your phone, like there's almost a tactile experience for the person using it too that makes it more fun almost. But I'm glad you brought up digital compared to like, I guess, traditional or like physical art forms too, because I feel like that's been part of my learning curve with art to wear is as a graphic designer, I'm so used to being on my laptop that switching back to like, oh, I have to drive to campus and go to studio so I can sew something or, I'm like crocheting on my couch at home. I don't know. Working physically is like definitely different than working on your laptop. I mean, you can like physically see it kind of come together in front of you, but there's also a learning curve with it too, I think, because you have to keep in mind you can't just kind of like, I don't know, for me it kind of came down to like time management too, because it's like, oh, I'm doing this all by myself with my own hands. It might take me a little longer. But yeah, especially like thinking about AI with graphic design is interesting too, because, everybody likes to say it's going to take our jobs. But at the same time, I think it could be used as a tool to like help our jobs in a way, as long as it's not, typing into a generator, hey, can you make this image for me? And then being like, I made this, But yeah, as far as I've seen, they're not really advanced enough to take our jobs. But it can be frustrating when you're searching for materials online and it's like, oh, well, I might not want to use this because it's from some random, I don't know, like generator or something.
Yeah, I think sometimes that traditional art might become more popular because of that.
Right. Yeah.
Because you cannot generate it, right? There are so many artists that print their art, and I think it's a great thing. I actually bought two printed art pieces, and I usually don't like it. I like actually like the original pieces more. Just seeing like the different like medium on top of paper, and it just, I don't know, I feel like it just looks much better. But I think we would appreciate more the traditional art because it's something you cannot just randomly recreate through a program.
Yeah, and it does get complicated, like you mentioned, when it comes to digital art too, because that is so popular now. And I think it should be respected as much as traditional art. But then I feel like there's kind of, especially because of AI just existing, there's this interpretation or like misconception that people have that it's like, oh, well, digital art is like by definition easier because like the machine is doing it for you. But that's not true. Like the technology is not, it might aid you in the process to like make a straight line faster or something like that. But I just think it should just be viewed as a different medium. I mean, you're still drawing, it's just digital versus traditional. And I can agree, there's like a respect that I have for traditional art, like physical on paper art. And I feel like every time I feel a little disconnected because I've been doing so much stuff on my laptop or my iPad, I can always go back to my sketchbook and kind of feel more relaxed again. I don't know how to explain it.
Because it's like an outlet for you, maybe?
I guess to some extent, yeah. And it's also just like, I'm the most familiar with it. It's what I started with originally. And just in terms of like getting an idea out of my head, just like if I want to sketch, I think there's something therapeutic about taking a pencil to paper. I mean, there's like screen protectors that exist for iPads that like make it feel like paper. I've always wanted those because I just feel like it's the tactile thing. Like even with the cameras, like I mentioned, there's like something about it that's like, oh, it's fun to operate this thing. There's all these different like buttons on it. Or with the sketchbook, it's like you can feel the paper and you can hear the pencil like scratching it when you're drawing, You don't always get that experience digitally, but that doesn't mean that it's not cool in its own way. It's just like a different experience while you're making it and when you like buy the piece or like see the finished product, you know?
I'm still waiting for the day when we have, in these like utopian, dystopian movies where you have like some crazy technology going on.
Yeah.
And I seriously, what I always think, I love reading books, and something that I truly enjoy is just having a book in my hand, right? It's the same thing. It's just the feeling is different than having a Kindle or like some other like electronic device that you use in order to read. I feel like it takes me so much longer to read online too, because it just gives me flashbacks like I'm doing an assignment for school. And I'm
Right.
like, I don't want to be on my laptop to even read and do things that I actually love and enjoy. And I realize I'm still waiting for the technology to come out where you have like a book, like actually a book, but the pages are like white, like they look like digital pages type of thing, but you can flip it in the same way. That would be so cool. Like you actually have a digital book, but the page flipping part is there too. In like you maybe like it changes, the pages changes, like they, I don't know, they change over time. I don't know, whatever. Just waiting for this to happen. But yeah, speaking of traditional, would you say people should start with traditional art first before they move on to like graphic designing or like anything that is more digital? Or does it matter at all to have like a certain order how you learn to be a graphic designer?
That's such a good question because I guess I've never really thought about that because most people I know did kind of start gravitating towards physical work and then they're like, oh, I like this. I want to kind of continue and maybe shift to something digital. But yeah, I don't know. I would say, at least for me personally, it was helpful to have some drawing knowledge. But I mean, at the same time, like, I didn't study art all throughout high school. I know a lot of graphic design students did. I personally did not. I was always in band, actually, like in high school and middle school. I took maybe 2 art classes in middle school and high school. I did some private lessons when I was younger. My mom actually sought it out. I didn't want to go, but she made me go, and it was worth it. It was like just this retired professor who she got tired of like being at home, so she would still have, some students just literally come to her house, and she would teach them art for like an hour or two. And it was like a relatively cheap rate too for private lessons because she just wanted to keep herself busy. So just really sweet lady. I feel like that just helped. So I guess like it just depends. I mean, if you have a passion for it, like you can make it work. However, like for me, I also had like no professional digital training until I came to NC State. Like I didn't take any classes in high school for Adobe or anything like that. No digital art classes. So I really was just, kind of learning on my own. I taught myself Procreate, which is like more of an illustration tool, like kind of how we were talking about like drawing on an iPad and stuff like that. And then there's Adobe, and I just kind of watched YouTube videos to kind of figure out how to even use it on my own. And I think that kind of helped going into this program just because NC State's program is absolutely wonderful. I would not trade it for the world that I came here, but there is not really a person that's going to like hold your hand and be like, okay, this is how you use Adobe. You're going to click this thing. I finally took a class last semester that was more tutorial based and it was super helpful, but it kind of just comes as like a secondary thing here. So it's like nice to kind of just throw yourself in personally. I hope this asks like or answers your question because
No, it
I feel like I've
does.
gone on a tangent.
No,
But
go ahead. Seriously,
yeah.
it's so good. I'm like just listening. I'm like, oh my gosh, someone finally is talking about that. Because I went, so I actually, I'm more a traditional artist. I actually do art myself. Was kind of like
Cool,
really random.
yeah.
I don't know. Not everyone knows that. Like I don't really. It's
Right.
not the first thing that pops out. And nowadays, like with the podcasting thing, it's just the first thing that pops out is just podcasting, dancing, and volleyball. I don't know. I feel
Right.
like maybe reading. But I was like, I always wanted to sketch. My mom, she loved art, so she would like paint in our living room, and she started getting back into art after being like in college and sketching for fun. through Bob Ross. That's kind of funny.
Cool.
So
Yeah.
so she just started like for fun watching his like video tutorials, and he's wonderful. I mean, I don't know, like the whole like so many jokes just happen through Bob Ross. Like it's funny. The little accidents and the little trees. It's just funny. And I always wanted to sketch, but it never worked out for me. Like it just didn't click at all. I couldn't grasp how to sketch. Like I tried, but it just didn't work. And I realized I went to South Dakota for my foreign exchange year, and I decided to take an art class. And this professor was a wonderful professor. I think he was the one who brought me to the understanding of how to actually sketch. Because I realized in Germany, people, that's the same thing that you just mentioned with no one actually teaches you how to do it. Something that I sometimes miss, like in Germany, it felt like maybe if you go to an art academy, but in order to get to the art academy, you need to create a portfolio, right? But no one teaches you how to sketch to get to this portfolio to even apply to art school. And it's so sad to me because I'm like, you expect me to be an artist and you don't really teach me the technique, but you think I already know how to do it. And we had, I feel like I'm going also on a tangent.
No, you're fine.
I took so I went to South Dakota. He was teaching us from the basics, like color theory, like everything, like circles. He would put like literally what you would imagine an art academy person would like do. I don't know. And he said that's the way they taught him in the Royal Academy in London. And the interesting thing is, I don't know, I feel like I never really, this is like a tangent moment. Okay. So this man, his name is Rick Mott, and he's a wonderful professor actually in the Rapids High School. And he retired, I think, 2 years ago. So this man was in art school, and he always wanted to sketch, but he actually also studied English and biology, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But he was like, well, I really want to pursue the art career. And, you know, like you probably have heard it, that people ask you, like, why are you pursuing actually graphic design? Like, is that even worth as a career? Is it not like you're an artist who's going to die, like, poor, like, type of thing? Seriously.
Especially with AI, everyone loves to be like, well, good luck finding a job in 5 years.
Oh my gosh. But do you know, like, how many times you, like, actually need graphic designers for like landscapes, for instance?
Absolutely.
I'm taking a landscape design class right now, and I'm like, I was not aware how much you need to know, like how these different programs work. Like the technical part is also important. And so, tangent, continuing on the tangent, this man decided to make a bet with his professor that he's gonna apply with like art pieces to win this one award to go to London. And he's like, you will never get it. Like, you're the worst student that we have right now. And he's like, bet, we're going to try it, and I'm going to prove you wrong that you're wrong. And funny enough, he actually was elected out of the whole university to, so he got a scholarship to study, and I don't know, like, you've heard probably the Royal Academy of Art in London is the best, like, art school in the world. And so he studied there, and so the technique and the way he would teach us is the same way. Like, you see, like, a random apple laying on the, I don't know, floor, sketch it. You see this one person sitting on the chair, sketch him. And it's just, like, that was, like, a drill. I went from, like, not being able to sketch anything to, like, oh, I can actually sketch. And realizing that there are different media, and it's different, right? Some person might be super bad in, like, watercolors. Oh my gosh, I don't understand watercolors to this point. I have no idea if you do, but I cannot.
Yeah, so it's so funny because, like, your story reminds me so much of, like, my art teacher that I had for private lessons, especially where she was a former professor as well. She had taught pretty much any age group, and she was, like, my by far favorite has been the kids, so I think that's why she wanted to work with me. I was 9 when I started going to her, I believe, but it was very similar because in some ways, because I think I kind of naturally picked up drawing. I don't know why, it just kind of like came to me a little bit, because when I went to see her, she was like, you're actually far along enough. We don't have to use like some of the books I had prepared for you, but she also gifted me some books that are like, these show you how to draw, which are like some things you mentioned, like perspective drawing with like, I don't know, an object, like there's still life, and then there's, you know, sketching people. She really like emphasized like you just need to like practice, like especially with if you want to draw people, like as they're moving is really helpful too, just to like get the movement down. It doesn't have to be like anatomically correct always. And I think that's something I kind of relearned in college too. There's just like all these different ways to approach drawing to learn it. And it's just so nice to have someone who actually like knows what they're talking about to like teach you and actually be a good teacher and show you how to do it. But you know, I feel like how do I word this? Like once you get to a certain age, I guess it's kind of like, especially in college, they kind of expect you to do a little on your own, you know, like learn certain things on your own. And maybe part of that too is because I didn't take those Adobe classes in high school. I think they do teach you like more about this tool does this and you can do this. And it's a little different because you're using a program to kind of make the same thing that you could, you know, with a pencil and paper. It's like you might want to hold your pencil a different way. Whereas, you know, like with the Adobe program, there's like all these different tools. Like it's super confusing. It's not beginner friendly. But, you know, like I kind of just had to teach myself. And it's funny that you brought up Bob Ross earlier because it kind of made me think about how far tutorials have come over time. I mean, I kind of just started to like watch YouTube tutorials, learn from other people who are already professional graphic designers. What do they do? What do they make? You know, and so I kind of just tried to soak up as much information as I could because that's like all I knew to do, you know, because it's not like I, you know, wanted to go out of my way to like hire someone to teach me how to do a portfolio. Like you were saying, you know, I just kind of taught myself and tried to make connections as much as I could, which also helped. But yeah, ultimately, if I look at my original portfolio now, it makes me want to pull my hair out. It does not look good, you know. It's interesting to see how far you can come as a designer as well as an artist. But yeah, I haven't done fine art in a long time. It's making me want to return to it now that we're talking about it so much.
I love the concept of sip and paint. I don't know if you heard of it. I feel like it started a lot like in Europe because people can just drink much earlier, and here it's more like, oh, you can't drink there and you can't drink on campus, etc., etc. But I think it's this concept of bringing people back together and actually developing this. Okay, art for me, honestly, is a thing almost like mathematics. Was kind of crazy if you think about it this way. What I mean by that is people always have this superstition or this mindset that they cannot do art, that they don't know what art is, they would never be a good artist. Yes, there are people that pick up art easier, but art is not about a talent, it's about how often you practice. It's like any other sport. And this whole stigma about, oh, I'm bad in math, so I will probably never understand anything, is the same thing. It's a mindset thing that you block your own abilities of growing somewhere where you could potentially go, right, in 10 years. And I think it's the same thing. I think art nowadays with social media and like so many platforms or opportunities, and you can like, you don't even need to paint, like buy the paint anymore. Like we're talking about, think about like 19th century or 18th century where people need to buy the paint and they wouldn't have the money to even like invest into paper, right? And now you can just have your own phone or like iPad. Most people have iPads. You can just use it and like start sketching, right? So much more accessible. And then the other thing is, that's kind of funny. Speaking of Adobe, that no one knew how to use Adobe, it's the same thing with Excel sheets. Like, how many people actually know and actually write on their CV that they are an expert in Microsoft Office programs, but have no clue how to even create a PowerPoint presentation? And then that was me. Yes, I was like in my first internship, sitting there, and I realized that, oh my gosh, I can drag down one little like number, and then it's the same. Can you imagine me sitting and manually typing in for a whole hour each like day of the week because I didn't know there's a stupid function where you can just drag it down the whole like row and then you have the perfect setup file. But yes, you learn, along the way. But basically I feel like the issue is that people never taught us in school in Germany how to actually sketch. I didn't have even one class, no matter what class I was in. And I even, after I returned from South Dakota, I decided to take art as one of my let's call it AP classes, one that I actually focus on and have my main like exams in. So art and art history. And it's this whole thing of it's really interesting, it's complex, it's more than just knowing how to sketch. It's like much, much more complex understanding art itself, like the whole history and everything, movements, like artists, techniques. It's complex. But who am I talking to, right? You're like, even as a graphic designer, you still go through graphic design history and everything. And I just remember this one guy who went now to fashion school, and he always wanted to do it, but he didn't know how to sketch and no one taught him. So it took him a whole year. He had to take off school. Like after he finished high school, he decided to take off one whole year and just practice sketching to get his portfolio in. And he got in. He's really wonderful like designer right now, and I'm really like proud of him like for the accomplishments. But it's just something that I'm super upset sometimes. Like no one teaches you even the basics, like the
Yeah.
fundamental parts of how to sketch.
Yeah, it's crazy because, I mean, when I think about that, I feel so lucky to have the teachers that I've had because I really did get luck at the draw with my private art teacher that I had. And then I had a teacher in high school. I took him for one semester, but he was very sweet and very caring about what he did. And he definitely taught us how to draw. He did a lot of like perspective work, which I had already kind of done with my previous teacher, but I felt really lucky to have them because I know that's not often the experience for everyone. I see like memes from other art students all the time where it's like how your teacher ruins your picture and they're, sharpening over the drawing and just like ruining it.
Oh my gosh, they
during the
do?
crit. I never have had that happen, but I think it might just be I had teachers that were fairly kind and but I don't know, and like you said, traditional art, like my private art teacher that I had when I was younger, she actually started me with watercolor and then we moved on to acrylics and oils. And I was so frustrated with watercolor, but I think it was really helpful when it came to like learning color theory, like you had mentioned, because like color theory, like sketching kind of came easier to me, like quote unquote easier, but color theory never really was like the most easy to me. I mean, I know how to shade, but picking colors that are complementary and things like that are very important in graphic design, especially like getting high contrast for a website and stuff like that. And so I think having that prior watercolor knowledge actually is kind of helpful because you kind of work the opposite of oils from what I understand. So, I mean, you're starting with like a blank paper, and if you don't, like block certain things out that you want to stay white, you could potentially like, I mean, not ruin the piece, but like I've had moments like that where it's like, oh, I forgot to, put the coating on this so it doesn't get wet, and then it blended together and, not waiting long enough before it dries and then the colors blend. And I don't know, getting the layering right, I think is what I'm getting at, is like you're working from light to dark. And so I guess practicing with that, I don't know, kind of gives you perspective for how forgiving digital work can be, but it also gives you perspective for like how color theory works.
I was thinking, I started with actually also like pencils, like black, white, no colors. That's how
Yeah,
you
like
should.
charcoals and stuff.
And the interesting thing is, for me, was learning how to actually sketch a face, just like from the
Yeah.
front.
Mhm.
Something that comes to me now really natural, but it's this whole thing of, how a lot of people start with outlining how a face looks like on paper. So it's like the shape of the face first, and then they put in everything else inside. I don't do that anymore because my teacher taught me I should start with the eyes first. And it's crazy because I never thought of it. And I realize this is like not art related, but a lot of times what we do is creating like this whole like picture and seeing like, oh, this is how it actually, this is what's happening there. This is what we should do. But actually starting from the middle like part and then working yourself outside is actually maybe more beneficial in like certain concepts. Really random thing. Example. In business, we do different analysis of like competition, etc. And the way usually people look at it is like from the outside. They're like, oh yeah, we see Amazon being such a great like competitor. But how you should actually look at it is like from an industry analysis perspective. That's what I've been learning a lot lately. Is like looking from Amazon's perspective rather than from outside, knowing what is it like to be in that shoes. Same thing. You don't understand how someone feels like, right? Look how they feel in the situation rather than from outside how it looks like. Yeah, really random thing to take an analogy to like eyes and sketching faces.
No, I'm so glad you brought that up because that actually is like exactly what I do. That is like exactly what it's like being, especially a graphic and experience designer. So like not being limited just to graphic design, but also doing experience design, which is going to be like user experience and like I even do a little like user interface, but just the whole concept of like my job is to be designing for the user, designing for the people, and imagining what their perspective is going to be like using whatever that product is, whether it's like an app or like even a poster. If I'm designing a poster, what is this person going to feel when they look at this poster? Are they going to want to go to this event or whatever, you know, if it's a flyer, you know, are they going to want to go to this event, or is it going to actually be intriguing? And it's a lot of different things that you have to think about with like making it eye-catching, making it intriguing visually, but also having some kind of message there that's actually going to resonate, or like some kind of useful tool that's going to be beneficial to them if it's an app or a website. So definitely perspective is something to think about. And I like that you talked about starting with the eyes with drawing, because that's just your process. And it's like, if that works for you, then it works. And I think that that's something I've had to learn being in school too, is going through like my own process. My process doesn't really look, you know, there is like an ideal design process. I think it's like 6 steps. I definitely should know every step off the top of my head.
That's okay.
But I cannot think of it right now.
Oh my gosh.
But you know, like for me personally, I jump around. You're not gonna see me go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's usually like 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're going back to 1. Okay, we're going back to 3. No, we got to go back to 2. So it's like kind of just this back and forth, but it is beneficial. And honestly, like a lot of teachers will tell you, like sometimes that's necessary. Sometimes you're gonna run into a problem, and it's like, well, now I have to kind of troubleshoot. You know, do I need to reform my concept a little bit? And I had this one project last semester that was like that a lot. We wanted to make, our assignment was kind of to make like a business, or it didn't even have to be a business, but we originally wanted it to be a B2B business, which I'm assuming you know that,
Business
right?
to
Like,
business.
yeah. So we were thinking about, you know, like doing this business that kind of works with other apartments and stuff and kind of does interior design for them with plants. Like our assignment was to do some kind of plant related company. And so we were like, okay, you know, that could be really cool for people who rent and working with rentals. How can we design ways that they can use plants and people can optimize the space and make it like more inviting without sacrificing their lease agreements? So, and then we were like, well, maybe working with the apartments is not really what we want to do. Maybe we do want to do B2C and be selling directly to those people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because then it's like, I feel like that's almost more intriguing, you know, and honestly more thoughtful. Like if I was a renter, you know, thinking about like them actually coming to me and being like, hey, would you want to spend a little bit of money on this product, but you'll be able to have like plants in your apartment without having to worry about all these other issues that could come with that, you know, because the whole reason we had gotten into that was just like, you can't garden if you rent, you know? So like thinking of problems that are also like relevant to us is also relevant to design. And I was hoping we'd get to talk about that today, just because, I mean, I don't know. You see a lot of like people who are very prominent in design. Like, I don't know. A good example I like to always harp on is like Elon Musk. I know he's not a designer, but he comes up with these concepts that like sound okay, right? Like the Tesla is like supposed to be outrageously sustainable and eco-friendly because it's electric.
And the Tesla is a design product too, right?
Right.
Like, people think of always design in such a narrow way sometimes, but I'm like, when people ask me, oh, I actually love car design. Actually, like, the thing I'm actually passionate about is car designs. And I don't actually know the technical part as much, but I do appreciate how a car looks like. The colors, the seats, oh my gosh, please, red leather seats. I'm sorry, we're like dropping. No, it's just something. It's like the way it's shaped. These are designers that also work. It's like it's a different niche, but it's also important, right? How it makes us feel. How do you feel when you buy a certain car? The design plays a huge role too. It's not only the function.
Right, exactly. And I'm glad I like cars too. We could yap about cars. But
oh my gosh.
No, I just bring him up because it's like cool idea. Like, yeah, there's this car that can be like super sustainable, but it feels like there's this like luxury vibe to it because it is so expensive. What is the average the average person is not going to buy a Tesla. So I guess that's kind of who I want to be as a designer, is like an ethical designer, if you want to like put a name on it, because I want to solve that problem of like, okay, well, how can we make this sustainable car actually affordable to the average person in a way that would actually be sustainable, because then people would actually be using them and it would actually cut down on the, because if it's only the people that can afford it using it, how much is that actually going to cut down on pollution? I don't know.
Well, that's a valid point. I think like from a business student perspective, it's kind of interesting to hear like a different completely view, because for us, like how we learn is like you target a certain group, and there's a whole process that's really more complex than just saying, oh, we're targeting a group, like a segment. But he picked this segment because of different reasons, a different like concepts, and like there are different reasons why he picks specifically like a luxury item
right, exactly.
segment. And honestly, I don't like Teslas.
I don't either. There's so many issues that I'm not even mentioning right now with those cars.
Look-wise, it's just not my thing. I don't like the white seats inside. I think they get super dirty. If you think from like a perspective of someone who's like even a college student, you don't want white seats in your car.
No, that car is too expensive to have as a college car unless you have the money to fix it.
Oh my gosh, yes. But the other thing is, car designs is one thing. Maybe to drop a name, I love Pagani cars. I don't know if you heard Pagani.
Ooh, I don't know if I do. Yeah,
I think that's my favorite probably when it comes to design, like car design. It's so Pagani cars. I feel like now we dropped into a different design niche. I think the guy was working for Ferrari, if I'm not wrong, and he wanted to create his own design. So he started his own brand instead and left Ferrari and started Pagani, what is Italian designer who models his cars after women eyes. Oh my gosh, this is so strange to say, but basically the way he apparently sees it, like the windshields are like consider the eyes of the woman, and then you have this beautiful car. But whatever, it's an interesting, if anyone wants to look into that, I think it's an interesting car design to have. Looks a little bit like Back into the Future type of thing, where like the car opens up, like how would you call it, like
a hatch, I guess.
It's it's really interesting. But yeah, speaking, maybe going back a little bit to design and graphic design interface, I love the idea that you mentioned about the project selling plans to like actually focusing on the customer. I have a minor in horticulture science, so we do right now landscape design, small landscape design, and also like how to get more green spaces into like urban areas too.
Yeah, that was like something we were thinking about as well.
And I think what would be cool, in my opinion, but that's just a random thought that is like a creative process thought, is if I'm the customer who's entering, like I'm moving into the apartment, right? Let's just switch the direction. And I want to have plants, but I don't know much about plants. And let's be honest, I'm going to be saying that out loud. I'm not a big fan of succulents, and I have 2 of them at home. But I think people are just scared of taking care of other plants because they think succulents are the easiest ones to take care of. Because we have this image, and it is, if you compare it, yes, maybe they're easier to take care of. But how many people out there actually kill their succulent? I mean, let's be honest. Oh my gosh. Look, I'm just saying. And so when you look at it from this perspective, you're like, well, it's going to die anyway. So you might as well give it a shot, like, and understand what is actually happening. So the interesting thing is in horticulture. Horticulture is, I don't know if you know what horticulture is. Some people don't. And it's like how to garden, basically, but also like with botany and like other things that you just need to incorporate into your like studies, plant bio and so on. And it's just, maybe I would love to just be like, oh, I really want to have this one plant. And you talk to a designer who actually also has knowledge and works maybe with someone who has like knowledge on plants, and you can like bring into the space, in the interior design space, plants that would fit the like setup of the room, but also bring more green space, like greenery into your room, without you even needing to know what type of plants you need, because a lot of times you don't know what to even put in the corner, right? You're like, I want to have a huge plant there. Let's just go with any plant. It doesn't work this way, right? So someone who could be like even a designer and be like, okay, we can place a specific plant in this corner and you can pay us a fee.
Yeah, and that's definitely something we thought about with that project too, is like, I think for me and my role in the project, I really wanted to create a sense of community, even though we were going to do a more traditional B2C kind of like business plan or business model, I guess. I didn't want it to be like too digital, because it's like, okay, well, we're making a website that has all these like resources on it, and you can order these little kits that are easy to install and renter friendly for you to have like an indoor mini garden, or have your little plants however you want them. But I made like flyers for these fake events for this project, because I really wanted it to be like communal, like, hey, come to this, build your own mini greenhouse workshop, so you can have like a tiny greenhouse in your apartment, or like whatever. I think that's the only event I can remember off the top of my head right now. But yeah, just like, I think community is important, like in the plant world especially too, because the more I've made friends that know how to take care of plants, I'm like, oh, so I definitely did not take care of that properly. That was my fault that thing died. It's a learning curve for sure, with that kind of stuff for me. But yeah.
No, that's totally fine. I think a lot of people kill their plants. I'm just saying. Would you say, like, regarding of like art and design, do you think you have to go to school to be a graphic designer?
I'm so glad you brought this up, because I was hoping we kind of like return to some school topics too. I have mixed feelings. Personally, honestly, no, because it depends on what you want to do. I think for me, the best thing to do was school, just because I've always wanted to go to school. Like, why not? At least that way, unfortunately, in our society, it's like kind of more guaranteed that I'll get a certain amount of money when I get, entry level job or whatever. But I think it's completely doable to do it on your own. And same thing to be said for, your portfolio. Like, you can build a portfolio whether you have proper experience or not. I mean, I built my portfolio that got me into this program without any prior graphic design knowledge. I literally just watched YouTube videos, talked to as many people as I could, just soaked up information wherever I could. And I think that is really what helped. And I think just like, as long as you can get a good grasp on like design, I don't know, like the main concepts of design that are important, especially in like, I just find experience design to be so important, especially with graphic, because I feel like it's made me so much more ethical in how I design. And I think that should just be like an important thing for everyone as well. Because I think we have too many people in the world right now that are just designing to get rich. So it's like the get rich quick kind of formula. Like, that's why I say, like, no, you don't need to go to school to be a graphic designer, but that's like with an asterisk. Like, do you have the right passion and do you have the right motives? I think if you can answer both of those questions with like, yes, I care about, helping people with my designs, then like, I think it's, it'll come. I really don't like those like Instagram posts that are like, oh, do you need a side hustle? Just design a t-shirt really quick in Canva and then you can upload it to Printify and you can have your own side business. I just don't like those because I feel like it's this false sense of hope of like, oh, you can be a graphic designer. You just can do it on the side. It's a little side hustle. Like, no, it's a little more than that, but it's
It's the first step,
not
right? Into the door and just getting up there. Like
like if you want to do that for fun, that's great, but don't sit around saying, "Oh, I can learn graphic design in a weekend and have a side hustle," I feel like there's like that should be kind of like a how to practice kind of thing, rather than, "Oh, I already know how to do it. I know how to use Canva." There's like levels here. But that being said, I mean, Canva shouldn't be hated on as much as it is. I think it's looked down upon, like, oh, you're a graphic designer, you shouldn't be using that. Or same thing with like Wix, if you know Wix Studio, the like website maker. I've received some like kind of, I don't know, looking down upon kind of vibes from people from using it before, but I think it's just whatever you're comfortable with, like getting more familiar with how to create this stuff. I think Wix is a great resource to just like learn from templates, like what works on a website, like what looks good, what color combos look good, depending on what kind of like message you want your website to have. What do you want it to like come off like? What do you want the tone to be like? And same thing for Canva. They have some great templates on there that can teach you hierarchy and color contrast and things like that too. So, I mean, they're good like beginner tools. And I think that they can be like used in ways that can eventually look like more professional. Like you don't have to just take a template and throw your information in it. If that serves the purpose that you need it for, that's great. But it's like if you want to go deeper into graphic design, you can look at the template and be like, okay, well, how did they lay this out? And how can I take my style and create my own thing from learning from like, oh, well, this text is bigger than this text. Does that make sense? I feel like I'm getting a little specific.
No, it's perfect. I think like especially if anyone who's listening, or like if you're interested in like graphic design but you're completely like, I don't know, if you're an engineer but you're interested in graphic design, like even I'm thinking of like how many people want to start a startup, and I'm thinking how Canva and like these type of programs can help them build up their startup or business, or even their like portfolio on Instagram. Like it helps because not everyone has the money to invest into an Adobe program that is super expensive, right? Not everyone has the time too. So having like a program that might help you generate faster things and actually getting into it and like feeling it out type of thing. Like, do I even like it? Do I want to actually do it? Might be helpful. Like even for a high school student, do you like doing these type of things? Just giving it a try and seeing like where it brings you, and then realizing, oh, maybe I can do even more of that, right?
Right. Yeah, because I mean, like we talked about earlier, like Adobe is not the most beginner friendly. So I mean, I wouldn't take a 14-year-old who says I'm interested in graphic design and put them right in front of a computer that just has Adobe on it and say, have fun, because they're gonna be like, how do I use this? I don't know where any of the tools are, what any of them do, like at least give them a video. Or like you said, there's plenty of places that have these templates that you can learn from. I think the only thing I would say is like when it comes to making a portfolio, it should be original work. And I think that's why like even like AI gets this bad connotation too of like, oh, you shouldn't use that. That's not original. A machine made that. But it's like, if you're using it for showing someone a concept, not a final product, I think it's totally fine. Like I've done that in my classes before too, like working on like product design. What is this thing that I'm making gonna look like? And my friend actually, it was a project we did for the Marbles Kids Museum a few years ago. And my friend actually ended up making it was a map made out of like wood, kind of like you would see it like, for example, you go to the doctor's office as a kid and they have like the little wood toys that you can kind of like play around with and stuff. It was like kind of based off of that. And our original concept image was, I just typed into AI, like, can you make a wooden map with like little knobs on it that looks like the little toys in the doctor's office? And it was pretty good. Like it looked like what that sounds like. You could tell the kid was like AI generated. It put like a little kid in the image playing with it. but it got the message across, because me saying these words, you might not be able to visualize, but when there's an image that I didn't have to spend hours making just to, present a concept, it saves a lot of time, because then a designer doesn't have to spend those hours just to get, well, I don't really think that fits. When you're going to a critique, sometimes your work is just going to get thrown out. So it's nice to have it as a tool. I think that like these programs that have been like frowned upon could also just be used as tools to make your life a little bit easier as a designer, but in a way that's not lazy. You know what I mean? Because like it would be lazy to take a template and claim it as your own work, but to take it and learn from it, like this is how the hierarchy works. This is what, maybe a poster should look like. Oh, well, like I'm noticing all the text is left aligned. And then you start to learn like the rules of graphic design,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
No, makes totally sense, I think. I'll be curious regarding like the concept of AI, but more like on a personal level. What are your like goals with graphic design? Like what are your like next 2 years goals, let's say it this way? What is something you wanna like work on, improve, or you feel like something, I don't know, just like a personal maybe intake into your career?
Ooh, that's a big question. I guess like,
Maybe one thing like that you feel like this is the thing that I want to work on after having so much. You went through so many different stages of graphic designing and just understanding the concepts and what is it, like where are you now? Like where's your path going to?
yeah, I honestly like don't know. I guess getting I guess getting clarity on that. I'm still trying to figure out exactly like what parts of graphic and experience design appeal the most to me, because I feel like I've always kind of been like a versatile artist or designer, or like kind of in anything I do. Like even when I was in band in high school, I didn't like to tell people like, oh, I have a favorite, because I was in percussion. I would just play anything. I liked doing snare. I liked playing piano. Those are two completely different things, but usually people have more of a preference for keyboard versus like drums. And I feel like it's really similar with design, of like, at least in our major here at State, having both disciplines kind of combined together is typically people prefer UX versus graphic, but I kind of like both. So kind of just finding my place there, I think. And I think I'm slowly like getting there. I would say, gosh, next 2 years. Well, I will graduate next year. So I'm hoping that I will have a job 2 years from now, some kind of entry level job. And I don't really know exactly what I want to do yet. Do I want to work like in a studio or in house? There's so many different opportunities. And I think that's like the beautiful thing about being a designer, is that there are so many opportunities. You can find a niche in anything. And I guess, you can pick out, if you like to work more fast paced, you might want to be in a studio if you want to always be around other designers, or if you want to be the only designer, or like one of the main designers for a company, you might want to work in house. It's going to be like slower work. It just kind of depends on the company at that point then, because, for me personally, I kind of know I don't want to work for like a law firm, for example, like in house, because I feel like it would be kind of repetitive work. The most you're going to be doing is like building them, little like logos for like where they're going to go on their papers, and little brochures and stuff like that. It's not uninteresting, but I think I'm just trying to figure out how to like broaden my horizons, I guess, because there are so many opportunities. I almost feel like I don't want to miss them. Because I'm interested in just a bunch of different things. Like I'm interested in publication. I'm interested in, even like website building. I find that fun. Like I like visual design too, like poster design and stuff like that. So it's just kind of all over the place. I'm hoping to maybe like build more freelance work. I think that would be really fun. So then I can like truly experiment with what I want to do past the boundaries of my classes. But even within my classes, I've been able to figure out a little more about what I want to do, I guess. kind of broad answer to your question, but
But it's a valid point, right? To like not know exactly what you want to do, but it also shows me how many different layers and aspects you have with your career. A lot of times we think it's just this one way street, and it's just like you have just, if you're a graphic designer, you're gonna do this and that. You're gonna do logo design, like the picture that people have sometimes of graphic design. And I think it's just so much more diverse, right? You can go into almost any industry and find a place, a niche where you need to be a designer, right? Maybe like a last question for this session would be, like how my podcast is about identity and like self-expression and finding yourself. And I think maybe like speaking a little bit of like even the art pieces that you're creating right now for the Art to Wear event, would you say, how would you describe your like graphic design style? I know that might be a complex thing. And how do you feel like it gives you the chance of expressing yourself, who you are? Or would you say that the art is independent from you and it's not part of your identity as much?
I would say, at least for this project, it is really personal. And that was kind of said at my review on Tuesday as well. It was mentioned like that it is really personal. Like they can even tell from an outside perspective that it is personal to me. And I don't know if it's like that project specifically or if it's kind of a little bit of like everything I do. At least in my graphic design style, I feel like I'm still kind of finding it to some extent. But I definitely have kind of like, I guess if there is like such a thing as like alternative like graphic design style, like I really like these like heavy weighted letters or like just like fonts that look a little bit quirky, a little different, but also clean, if that makes sense. And like with colors, I like a lot of contrast. I like a lot of like dark and light colors. And I feel like that can be seen in my piece, especially since my piece is like my art to wear piece. It's like transformative. So even though I'm doing one look, it kind of feels like I'm designing two. And I've even drawn it that way in my sketches because, you know, before the look transforms, it's like got these like black pieces on it, but like majority of it is like these light colors, like white and beige and silver. And then those like black or like darker pieces are removed. And there's a few other colors as well, like brown and red, but they're eventually removed to just show the light colors. And I feel like I feel like the contrast really boosts like what it could mean. Like people see a clear difference there between the two colors. And so you can kind of read into it and interpret the symbolism however you want. But for me personally, it kind of was inspired by like, should I go into the concept? It gets a little deep.
Well, go ahead. Why not?
Okay. So it's kind of like been inspired by, in short, like inspired by possession for me. So it's like this character, I guess, that, you know, has some like evil spirit in them. And that's like symbolized through the dark colors that are used that eventually get removed and they slowly get torn off. And with the performance, it's going to be like fairly dramatic and emotional. And I think that it's, you know, become something that can be interpreted any way that anyone would want to make it personal to them. But like to me, it kind of became personal because I was originally inspired like by my grandmother. And so like where she always crocheted and always sewed, like her entire life was always very crafty, into like any kind of home ec, if you've learned that term, like any kind of home ec kind of activity. She liked to cook and stuff too, but you know, she passed away like 2 years ago. So for me, that was like the biggest loss I had close to me. And so I kind of viewed possession from this different angle of like, rather than this like, I feel like in movies it's always this like angry, like really intense fight. I kind of wanted it to be like this transformation of like experiencing like grief and sorrow too, because the mortal person that's being possessed is like realizing they could lose themselves too. Like, so it's like this kind of concept of loss in a way that can be interpreted, but also eventually finding like self-growth. And I feel like that was kind of my personal experience too, was just like realizing she wouldn't want me depressed, you know? She wouldn't want me to be like all sad and not doing anything like I did for a little while after she passed away. She would want me to continue like designing and like making things. And so I feel like I've kind of like found my own self-growth in a way, like on my own, but also like through this project. And so it's kind of interesting because I don't typically present this project as like, well, my grandma inspired me, you know, but deep down for me, that's what it means. And I'm hoping that like when people see the exhibition, they can kind of find their own meaning too, because you could see it as like an internal battle, but you could also see it as like external, because it's like, how would you even define that, you know, with possession? Like, where is the difference between the soul and the body? Like, where's where's that boundary between like spirit, body, or like soul and mind, or like however you want to put it, you know what I mean? I don't know if that's
no,
makes sense.
it does. I feel like if we would have another hour, we'd probably go into philosophy. Like it's one of
Right?
the most interesting topics, in my opinion, about like, do we have a soul? Where's the soul? Is it a thing at all? Like the spirit of your own body? Like, I don't know. It's super, super interesting. But I think it's I love that you shared it with us. Like, just I'm now curious to see the like end like piece, how it's gonna look like, and just knowing the story and how emotional it is. And I think it shows just how much you can put like of yourself in your own like stories and experiences into like an art piece. And even if people don't see the full picture, I think how intentional every maybe like even think of like art like in a traditional way, every brush stroke has a specific meaning or maybe intention, even though maybe it's not, right? But you don't know, right? You don't know. And I think that's a really powerful message to have here on the podcast. When is the Art to Wear show? I know this is like going from deep to like non-deep things.
No, that's fine. I'm trying to remember. I think it is April 24th.
Okay,
One of those days. I will let you know for sure.
end
exactly,
of April. Yes.
Yeah.
So you better, no matter who's listening, you better go like and see Alyx work. Seriously, like I'm so excited for you. I think this is like one of the best experiences, and just I think getting out there and like creating something. And I think it's so much work, and the process of like getting the concept out, thinking of all these details, having this, oh my gosh, it's probably such an emotional aspect too, right? You're like getting emotional over doing this because it has a connection to your own self.
To some extent.
Yeah, maybe
I mean,
you're not crying in the corner like while doing that concept.
no,
but
yeah. Because it's kind of been like more inspiring than anything else, I feel like. It's kind of continuously giving me more confidence in a way, because I'm realizing like even in my own story, which, you know, I went surface level with, but just like how much I've grown as a person, like in college and since like losing my grandmother, and even like things that aren't even related to her, just like growing up. And I feel like that kind of is part of my theme as well, like with just like, which I'm kind of surprised we didn't touch on this more, but like internal struggles, like even having like my own struggles with like mental health. I feel like that's like very common in college. And so like dealing with like anxiety and depression too, I feel like that's how this piece could be interpreted. And I'm really hoping, like, I'm really excited to see like what people think, like if it's kind of like external or internal, and like how that affects, like if they see it as self-growth or if they see it as just like defeating your demons kind of thing, you know. It can kind of be seen as however you want to see it. It's one of those.
I always think of art therapy, like how people use art to like just get things out. And there's this whole concept that a friend of mine once showed me. So if you would take out your like a piece of paper right now and draw a tree, just start drawing a tree. It doesn't matter if you're a good artist, if you know how to draw a tree, just draw a tree. And so this practice is, so if you're listening, you need to stop here. So draw a tree on a piece of paper. And now you're looking at what you've drawn. And based on the reflection, how the tree looks like, it shows apparently, and apparently it's proven by scientists too, your emotional well-being. Because if the tree is really like, has no leaves and is really like, think of any like autumn creepy tree that you would see. That's a reflection of you're not doing well right now. And so people apparently add more details and draw a tree in completely different ways because I don't know, maybe we have a connection to nature. I don't know. There's something that I can't even fully explain, but the way we perceive nature and art and specifically plants resonates with our well-being too.
Yeah, that's so interesting to think about too because I've had a therapist do that with me before. Like sit me down and is like, okay, you're gonna draw a tree.
Oh, really?
But there were different, yeah,
Oh
but
my
there were
gosh.
different steps to it. It was like, there were like different elements that were supposed to like like represent different things, and I don't remember like everything. I think it was like leaves on the tree or like people who are in your support system and things like that. I don't remember exactly. And there were also like roots, like you drew the roots into the ground and like they were supposed to represent something to like
How
I guess
grounded you are almost, or
I think you like I think that part was like people in your life who have like impacted you in like positive
Oh.
ways. So it was kind of like a positive spin on what you're talking about, where I guess that would be like more of an indication of how you're mentally doing. This one was kind of more like, look at all the like good things you have like going in your life. I just thought it was a cool exercise because then I had like this whole picture of a tree and I was like, there's all these people and like pets and like blessings I have in my life, basically like all these things that I'm grateful for kind of. So it was nice.
Grateful for, exactly. That's the word that I was waiting for. Maybe like I know we couldn't talk about everything. It's kind of always upsetting, but time flies. I'm serious.
Right?
It's so fantastic. But do you have like a last thing, like piece of advice or just a thought that you just would love to leave with the listeners here, specific, like anything we talked about today?
Well, I guess if you're interested in design or art, like in any way, shape, or form, I would say just like go for it. It doesn't have to be perfect. Everybody can have their own style, their own medium. The opportunities are literally endless. And if you want to learn more, the information is out there. It's online. It's in person. I know there's like a lot of resources around here, especially like on campus if you're a student. There's like the craft center, and then the design library is like open to anyone before 5 p.m. I believe. So I mean, there's different resources you can use. I'm probably forgetting a lot of them, but I don't know. I think that's an important thing that we talked about today is just like soaking up any like information or any education that you can give yourself. I think is so important when it comes to like learning something new like that. And it's allowed me to like keep myself busy, which wasn't always like easy to do for me. So, I mean, yeah, I just say like throw yourself at it. I never thought I was good at sewing. I didn't want to sew for this, but I made myself do it and it was worth it. It's not about how good you are at it. It's like how willing you are to try and experiment.
And experience it, right? And I'm like just thinking about, I was like, get outside. The weather is good.
Yeah.
We were talking about how nice the weather is, and go to this one. We have even like a bookshop, like on a corner, like at the corner, like the secondhand bookshop. Find even go to a secondhand bookshop and buy just a random book about whatever you're interested in. And you can even like do old school things that you can just look at like an art book and like see like what they teach you technique and like color theory. Like there's so many different things that you can do. And
you could even buy a cheap book and make a collage out of it if you wanted to.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And look on Pinterest, go on Instagram. I think it's the willingness to actually do it. It's not perceiving something as a dream, but rather as a goal.
Yeah, exactly.
I was reading up on that a lot, and I feel like we dream so many times about something. Oh, I would love to be a good artist. I would love to create this one t-shirt. We have like the t-shirt contests. I know we were joking about the t-shirts, and it's like, yeah, you're not a graphic designer if you're creating a t-shirt. But at the same time, if you think about it, if you want to give it a try, get out there and do these things and put a goal out there and like, this is a goal I'm going to achieve. It's not a New Year's resolution. It's not a dream. It's a goal that I'm going to actually achieve in small little steps. So thank you so much. This was fantastic.
Yeah, it's been really fun.
I love this episode. I'm really happy that you were here. I hope your design project will just work out for the best. And for anyone who's interested in outerwear, please, 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 please look out for the beautiful, beautiful piece that Alyx will create for us. So thank you so much, Alyx, again.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And everyone, I wish you a wonderful day. Bye.